Now, the worrying links between a group of Conservative MPs and far-right, even neo-fascist political parties on the Council of Europe, an organisation founded by Winston Churchill after World War II to uphold human rights and democracy. A group on the Council, called the European Conservatives and Democratic Alliance, is chaired by Tory MP Ian Liddell-Grainger. It includes 15 other Conservative MPs and peers, as well as European colleagues who hold views that are deeply problematic. Sean Norris, who broke this story on the Byline Times website, has been telling me more.
So, despite us leaving the European Union, the UK is still a member of an entirely separate body called the Council of Europe. This is a body that brings together lots and lots of different European countries and also countries outside, such as Azerbaijan, the Ukraine, various former Soviet countries. And within that group, the Conservative MP Ian Liddell-Grainger chairs the European Conservatives and Democratic Alliance. And what's concerning about this alliance is that, as well as various Conservative MPs and one DUP MP, it also includes MPs from very controversial, far-right, one would even say neo-fascist organisations, including the Alternative for Deutschland, otherwise known as AfD, Greece's Greek Solution Party, and Spain's Vox. And these are organisations, for example, AfD, that has tried to downplay, for example, Germany's violence and the horrors of the genocide of the Holocaust. You know, these are anti-immigration, anti-abortion, anti-LGBTIQ political parties, some of whom have made very controversial statements that echo great replacement rhetoric, so this idea that white people in Europe are being replaced by migration from the global south. And interestingly, we've seen a lot lately with the Conservatives talking about Winston Churchill and, you know, defending the statue of Winston Churchill in Parliament Square. Now, the Council of Europe was an initiative co-founded by Winston Churchill, who, as we all know, fought the Nazis in World War II. So how is it that his political descendants are lining up with neo-fascist parties, with far-right parties, some of whom have direct links to Nazi officials from the 1930s, 1940s?
They are quite a collection of right-wing, or we would probably say by British standards, far-right parties, aren't they? In this group, you've got the anti-immigration Danish People's Party, you've got the Forum for Democracy from the Netherlands, and their leader has actually repeated this great replacement theory. AfD, who you mentioned in Germany, some of whose representatives have skirted very closely towards fascism and Nazism in their public statements.
Yeah, absolutely. So one member of the European Conservatives and Democratic Alliance, he's called Ulrich Omer. And in his election materials, he used a very controversial slogan, which is associated with the slogan that was emblazoned on the daggers owned by SS soldiers during the Second World War. Now, he says that he didn't realise that this was a banned phrase because obviously Germany has very strict rules about Holocaust imagery and Nazi imagery and associated language. But it really does give you a flavour of the kind of audience, the kind of voters, the kind of ideas and ideology that these AfD and its members are playing up to. And it really we should be asking questions about why the British right, the British centre-right, you know, our leading political party, the people who are in government, are sitting down at, one imagines, a virtual table right now with people who hold what are quite abhorrent far-right views.
And what have they said then? I know you've tried to contact the leader of the Conservative group in the Council of Europe.
Yeah, they didn't respond to my request for comment. What was really surprising to me is that, as far as I can tell, this hasn't been reported on before. So the reason I came across this story was because of an article in the Polish media about the membership of AfD to this organisation, which was co-founded by the Law and Justice Party. And, you know, they said actually AfD have been a member of this group since 2019, December 2019, and it was sort of ignored or, you know, forgotten about by the Polish media, but we really needed to be making a noise about this. And yeah, I'm curious as to why the UK press hasn't covered this either, because, you know, we do have a pretty good record of covering when Conservative MPs stand up with far-right activists. You know, there has been reporting of those kinds of issues. But this one has really flown under the radar for the last year and a bit. And I think we do need to be asking questions about who our MPs are forming alliances with and asking why they're comfortable forming those alliances and if they're going to take any action or what the threshold of bad behaviour or unpleasant remarks or hateful policies is going to be before you decide that you're not going to line up next to neo-fascists and very far-right parties.
I know there's a quote in your piece from a Polish academic, Dr. Rafał Pankowski. He's part of a group in Poland called Never Again. And he asks, where is the decency of the Conservative leaders? How can you build a Holocaust monument at Westminster while simultaneously openly collaborating with Holocaust revisionists, anti-Semites, homophobes, with groups preaching hatred against the Roma and the Muslims, with fans of Franco and Mussolini? It's a very pointed attack by Dr. Pankowski, isn't it? Where do you think it tells us that, if you like, traditional centre-right conservatism is now in the UK?
I think one of the interesting phenomena of the last few years has been the adoption in mainstream political parties, both in the UK but across Europe, of further to the right, if not far right, ideas. We've seen this in the kind of the collapse of the UKIP vote because the Conservative Party mainstreamed some of those narratives about migration, about minorities, about the culture war. You know, it's much more apparent in some European countries where, you know, for example, Fidesz in Hungary, the other far-right party in Hungary is almost defunct now because, you know, the policies coming out of Fidesz are doing the job for them. So I think we have to be really aware of where these patterns are happening and how we are seeing this co-option of either far right or, shall we say, very to the right narratives and policies in mainstream politics. The Conservatives are perfectly happy to use the figure of Winston Churchill to fuel a sort of this culture war that they seem very keen to be fighting. But when it comes to the values that perhaps he fought for in World War II, this great moment that was, you know, that they constantly bring up over and over again to prove what British values are and British values of decency and integrity. Well, where is that decency? Where is that integrity if you are playing to a crowd and allying with organisations and with individuals who preach hate?
Sian Norris. And just to confirm what Sian said in the interview, she did contact Conservative MP Ian Littlegranger about her story, which you can read in full in the Byline Times, but to date she hasn't received a reply.